One of the most memorable instance I remember, it was because it was a big deal at the time, was one of the guards, the head guards of hostel. We just played a prank on him where we hung his bicycle on top of the building.
Some of the cultural shocks you had encountered first when you came to the US after the B.Tech in India.
Attendance in classes was not so high when I was an undergrad. I missed a lot of classes, but I was quite surprised that if you don't go to class, it's considered really bad.
If not engineering, what career would you have pursued?
I would probably want to be a coach, a sports coach at like the highest level.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Gates, brought to you by Amalthea and Alumni Relations IIT Gandhinagar. I am Akshat Agarwal, and in this series, we bring to you the inspiring journeys of IIT Gandhinagar graduates making a global impact. Today, we are honored to have Professor Yogesh Goyal, a 2012 B.Tech honors graduate in chemical engineering from IIT Gandhinagar, who was awarded the gold medal for outstanding overall academic performance and the outstanding research. Professor Yogesh's journey has taken him from the classrooms of IIT Gandhinagar to a PhD at Princeton University, postdoctoral research at the University of Pennsylvania, and now to his current role as an assistant professor at the Northwestern University and investigator at the Chan Zuckerberg Biohub Network. Along the way, he has been recognized with prestigious honors such as the Schmidt Science Fellowship, Burroughs Wellcome Fund CASI Award, Jane Coffin Childs Fellowship, and more. Professor Yogesh, it's an honor to have you with us today.
Yeah, very excited to be here. Thanks for having me on this podcast.
Let us start from the beginning. You had joined IIT Gandhinagar in its earliest days. What led you to choose IIT Gandhinagar then, and what was your experience like as a part of its first batch?
Yeah, it was. I was just thinking about this question, and it was a very interesting time. I don't think most people when they are finishing their 12th or when they're 18 know too much about in India specifically. You get a rank, you use that rank to decide where you want to go, what you want to do. At that time, I think so. My family, we don't really have anyone in academia before me, so we just got in touch with some people we knew, and they said, "Oh, IIT Gandhinagar could be a good place to go based on your rank." And so it was quite serendipitous in that sense. What was nice was when we visited Ahmedabad, it was quite a good experience, and we felt I could stay here for 4 years, do my undergrad. So a lot of the decision to go to IIT Gandhinagar, to answer your question, was quite a practical one. But I have to say, looking back, it was probably the best decision I made during that time because of various opportunities. And when you start as a first batch, student, you still don't have a campus. You're learning things. You're setting the culture of a place. The class is small. The class sizes are small, right? So we were just 90 people. So everyone knew everyone. So there was a lot of camaraderie and friendships, some of which I still carry up to today. Uh, and there was a lot of looking after each other and learning together. So it turned out to be an extremely amazing experience, which is also why I still like to stay in touch with my undergrad and the opportunities that maybe I can help students as much as I can who are coming out now.
So, moving on to the next question. So, you have mentioned before and now as well that the close knit environment and mentorship at IIT Gandhinagar played a big role in your journey. So, could you share some memorable stories or a funny anecdote from your hostel days?
Yeah, it was great because also the faculty who were there, some came from IIT Bombay, but some were new young assistant professors. So at the hostel level, it was quite a lot of fun. You look back and you think about things that you went through. One of the things it's very funny when we started was our first couple of months when we moved to the new hostels, there was no water. So we had to figure out how to take shower, how to go to the bathroom, but these things bring you together and, and you use these opportunities to play pranks on other people. Birthdays were a big thing because we were just 90, many of us would celebrate together. One of the most memorable instance I remember, it was because it was a big deal at the time, was one of the guards, the head guards of hostel, we just played a prank on him where we hung his bicycle on top of the building, and it took him a long time to figure out where it was. So that stands out in many ways. But since we, like Amalthea is now a established thing, BlitzCon, cultural festival is an established thing. A lot of those things we were still, as a first batch, we were planning out how our cultural festival looked like, or technical festival. So pretty much every night there was discussion on various things. What is it, what is the name of, all these names that we have now are from our batch, and you would have competitions to decide what then. So a lot of thought went into things, because we always, then director Sudhir Jain, who I like very much, at some point said, you never want to be just as good or worse than your father or your mother or your parents, right? So there was always a drive to do better than the older IITs, and that helped us to really set things to in a way that is well thought of to the extent possible. And there was a lot of activity. I played a lot of basketball also. That's another instance where we didn't have a court early on, but the moment we had an opportunity to get something, we got a basketball court. We won against some good teams uh, in inter IIT, and so there's no single instance in that sense that stands out, but every day was just a very exciting time. And I think when I look back and I talk to my other colleagues here who are from more established IITs, you can see that we certainly had a lot more eventful time in terms of initiatives. It also makes you more mature as a person, right? So you stop getting frizzled by small things that don't work out. So that has carried with me as a faculty. Another thing that was nice, and Jason is still there, and some other faculty are still there. And Jason was much younger when we were there, so a lot of faculty would just play with us, hang out with us. It was just a great time in that sense.
Hostel life is truly something to be cherished about. Like,
I really miss it. I think it was probably the best time of my life in terms of having fun and making bonds.
yes. So for the next question, that you have received the Outstanding Research Award as an undergrad. So how did you get interested in research, and what kind of research did you pursue at IIT Gandhinagar? How did it influence your career path as well?
Yeah, so I think the first real experience happened because of this professor in chemical engineering. He came from IIT Bombay. I think kind of spent like 30 years at IIT Bombay, Narayana Murthy. And I thought Professor Narayana Murthy was very conscientious and wanted students to learn the right way. And so he exposed me to various opportunities. He helped me find a summer internship at IIT Bombay at the end of my first year. And at that time, to be honest, I was quite set on what most people who enter IIT do. Well, I was gonna, do an MBA or IAS, and because I thought I would just do that because that's what everyone comes in thinks, at least during my time. I was, the marketing head of Blitzcron and then the hospitality head of Blitzcron. So I was doing a lot of these leadership positions, which were very good experience. But this random research experience at IIT Bombay really made me like, oh, I kind of like doing this. And that also defines how I run my life, how I think about my life. Uh, so one thing led to another, and then in my second year summer, I went to WashU, which was also facilitated again. One of the nice things about being at a new place like IIT Gandhinagar and having a dynamic director and faculty is they actively look for opportunities for you. So um, Sudhir had good friends and colleagues in the US, and he reached out to them for starting an internship exchange program. And that really was the start of my actually realizing I want to keep doing research. So I came to US, spent a summer at WashU. It was a great experience. Published a couple of papers, and that's really when I decided I'll do a PhD. But again, as you can see, a lot of these things wouldn't happen um, without active involvement of the faculty, which may not happen if the place is big, which might be changing now at IIT Gandhinagar as we are becoming more mature. I know some programs are mature, but how much you interact with every faculty on a daily basis is a little bit different.
Uh, Similar question that you had already mentioned about the involvement of faculties and being a dynamic environment. So, how did this approach to education, especially the focus on independence and decision making, shape you as a person?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And even at that time, I have to say, IIT Gandhinagar always tried new things, different things. We started this, I don't know what it's called now, but like first 3 to 4 weeks, you come in and you spend some time
Yeah, the
just
foundation
learning
program.
foundation program. Now, some other places also do it. I don't think it's a super new program because universities in the US do it, but for an Indian university to do it in 2012 or something, right? It was a big deal, and people were like, "Oh, why are you doing this?" You look back and you realize a lot of those things are useful. Just being good at solving math problems is not going to take you that far always, and you need to have a broader perspective of life. And I think a lot of those high risk initiatives, I hope, are paying off at IIT Gandhinagar. There's always pros and cons, but I think largely some of those initiatives have paid off. So for myself, just embracing uncertainty and be like, it's okay to not know if there will be water in the bathroom a week later, I think prepares you for something much bigger and makes you be okay with uncertainty. And when you choose career paths, you just don't know. Politics is already quite turbulent, so you have to change paths, you have to change your research, you have to think about career choices. And I think a lot of the way we dealt with life as an undergrad informs some of those things, and quite fearless in terms of what I do next. What I think about are important problems to work on, but the one thing that has stayed with me is I don't really care about money. So all I want to do is do great science and great research. So I strongly believe that my happiness comes from doing research, and as long as I can do that, keep doing it, uh, you know finances will work out. But for each person, it is very important to find what they like. And education at IIT Gandhinagar and knowing all these well-rounded stuff, it really helps you find yourself, for many people, not all. And that was special. I have to say, I still, um, you know I think just the rocky start, changing hostels, changing campus, is just a lot of those things have been a blessing in disguise now.
Truly insightful. So, after you did your B.Tech at IIT Gandhinagar, you went on to pursue a master's and PhD in chemical and biological engineering at Princeton, followed by postdoc work at the University of Pennsylvania. So, what inspired you to move into the intersection of engineering and biology?
Yeah, so I always thought I liked some aspect of biology, but I hadn't really taken any biology courses formally before moving to Princeton. We have a compulsory course, but it's not really, uh, in a true sense, thinking about biological problems. So I came to Princeton not knowing exactly what I would do, but it was a little bit more related to um, studying optimization in large scale chemical plants. My undergrad was in chemical engineering, so a lot of applied math problems. But when I moved to Princeton, I realized the person I thought I would want to work with, uh, it didn't seem like our frequencies would match. And that's when suddenly I came across more biologically focused research, and one thing led to another. You start, admiring things you like, and the people I worked with during my PhD, one was an applied mathematician, the other was a biologist, and it was just great to see how engineers and mathematicians could contribute to biology and be unique. In research, it's very important to be unique while impactful, and being at the intersection of things, truly at the intersection of things, gives you a lot of advantages. It is a hard journey to switch, but once you make the switch, it is quite rewarding. And so that way, Princeton and working on biological problems was quite an accident. But that accident, then solidified my interest in biology, and that's why I kept delving deeper and deeper into biological problems.
Truly like a carving out a different path than the normal paths in those days. So, similar question. Your research has spanned quantitative developmental biology, single cell systems, and synthetic biology. So, could you tell us about some of the exciting projects or breakthroughs from your graduate and postdoc years? And with the major fellowships and awards you have won, how has your perspective of research changed over the time?
That's a good question. So a lot of these things, you don't really, at least for me, I don't think I would do things for the awards. Awards are like consequences, not causes. So if you do good work and people like it, or you are lucky, in science, it's very important to be lucky. Uh, if you're lucky, you do good work and people recognize it. But a lot of the things that I did was, and that's something I also do in my own lab. The lab has grown, my own lab has grown quite a bit, but always the goal has been to start to do curiosity-driven science. So I want people in the lab to always only work on projects that they're excited about, which also means we work on a range of different problems. Some labs, in fact, most labs in biology or engineering are focused on one problem. They study it for 30 years, 40 years, and that's been a great model, right? You get a lot of Nobel Prizes out of it. But the other model is also quite exciting, which is what I like to follow is we pick different problems and we bring quantitative engineering and mathematical thinking to biological problems, which in some ways could be called synthetic biology, bioengineering, so on and so forth. So which also explains my PhD was in a completely different area than my postdoc. And now in my lab, we are working on many different areas. So my PhD was on studying how does uh, uh, how does an animal form from a single cell, and we focused our studies by using a common fruit fly, which you find on bananas, where you start from a single cell and it divides, it differentiates into cell types, which make eyes and nose and brain. And the way I thought about these problems in biology was there's a lot of parallels with chemical engineering in a sense that the embryo is a closed system, and it exchanging just gases with outside, and so every material that is needed is already deposited by the mother. So there are millions of chemical reactions happening, a lot of bistability, multi-stability systems, which all work together to give rise to Turing patterns or other kind of patterns, which makes us who we are. So even though I moved to biology, if you look at a lot of our work from my PhD, you will find a lot of control systems theory equations on proportional feedback, integral feedback, and what kind of feedbacks might be operational when you are starting from a clean slate, which is an embryo, and painting different cell types on top of it, and all of that proceeds through complex reactions and bifurcations and so on and so forth. So it was quite exciting. I wanted to, around 2015, 2016, there was a big interest in new discoveries in single cell technologies. So I moved on to start my postdoc in a single cell biology lab, where the focus is to build new technologies and a framework to study individual cell behavior. And there we studied this in the context of drug resistance in cancer, where we have gotten extremely good at curing most of the cancer, but the word most is very important because most is not all. And you often end up seeing cases where you give drug to patients, the tumor goes away, but a few months later it comes back and it's no longer treatable, a process which is called relapse in patients. So we are trying to understand what is different about those few cells that survived therapy and then depopulated the tumor. Now in my own lab, we are working on those kind of problems, but we have expanded. One of the main projects in the lab is to build models of human embryos in a dish. Can we recreate early human development, within ethics, of course, uh, because once we are able to do that, we can study different genetic disorders that people suffer through, and and study what is the earliest onset, and come up with solutions. A lot of this also happens only because the lab is quite interdisciplinary. So if you go and check my lab website, you see there are three physicists, a couple of computer scientists, a couple of engineers. I also have a doctor in my lab. So you really need these diverse backgrounds, couple of mathematicians, to really get things working together. And this also is informed again from my, rapid shifts in my interests from undergrad in chemical engineering to biology to different kinds of biology. We are doing a lot of machine learning now in the lab because a couple of we have collaborations with NVIDIA. So you just go where science takes you, and as long as every day you wake up, you are having fun. I think it's all good.
Very interesting as well. So, as you had already said, you have been associated with three top US universities, first as a student, then postdoc, and now as a assistant professor and the investigator at the Chan Zuckerberg Biohub. So, how has the transition been through all of those different phases, and especially some of the cultural shocks you had encountered first when you came to the US after the B.Tech in India?
Yeah, I mean the biggest cultural shock was obviously when I first came to the US, which was for my PhD. I came for an internship, but PhD is a longer period, and that's when you really meet people and figure things out. Um, it's hard to pinpoint a single cultural shock. I mean, there's so many things. They're like simple things like, in India, you call everyone on phone. In the US, you don't call people unless it's like an emergency. And I only realized it later. They're like little day-to-day things that you realize is just culturally different. Scientifically, what was quite surprising, and I didn't know this, is typically, I don't know if this is true, so I can't speak for the current batch and in general, but I think attendance in classes was not so high when I was an undergrad. I missed a lot of classes, but I was quite surprised that uh, if you don't go to class, it's considered really bad. And so when I first moved to Princeton, first month I was just not going to classes. I was like, I'll figure it out. And turns out it was not something that was done as commonly. So that was a big shock because I was just, I did well in undergrad and I understood things, but sitting through classes, even if you don't enjoy it, was very interesting. Maybe it was self-selected group of graduate PhD students, but still I saw uh, that was quite different. And uh, another cultural shock was there was too many homeworks that you get in classes, uh, but the exams are much easier. So for me, courses were not that hard at Princeton because I think there's a big difference. We follow British style, right? In India, a lot more than the US style. So exams in the end are the biggest factor, but the exams were quite difficult in IIT. Um, the homeworks were fine, but the exams were not just some kind of extensions of homeworks. Whereas in the US, I found the homeworks were quite hard and very time consuming, but the exams were quite easy. So that was a big switch, which meant although I was always busy doing homework, exams were quite easy for me, and I think I can credit IIT Gandhinagar education for that. Although I have to say, most people who come from IIT system, not just IIT Gandhinagar, do quite well in exams here, just because they're quite easy, and that's a well-known thing. So there are like different kinds of differences that you learn. I started following some American sports, playing with people. So wherever you are, I don't really care if I'm in India or in the US. You just have to find like-minded people who think like you or make you better, and that's what has happened for me since I moved here. And you asked about differences at different places. There are quite a big differences, right? Amount of differences, because Princeton is a small town, and Philly is a city, and Chicago is a much bigger city. So there are cultural differences that come with being in a big city or a small city, and how you live your life accordingly. One of the things that I've really enjoyed about US is comedy and improv here, which now Indian comedy scene is really picked up in the last 5 years. But when I was a student, it was really non-existent. So I love going to comedy shows or improv shows, and I would say that's because of my being in the US for some time now.
So the next question is that your recent framework, Fate Map, combines single-cell RNA sequencing and DNA barcoding to track cell fates in cancer therapy. So could you explain how this innovation works and its potential impact?
Yeah, so this was one of our recent discoveries. About 2 years ago, this paper came out. This is related to the cancer drug resistance work I was telling you about earlier, where a big challenge for the field or just in general biology is we're always looking at a fixed time point and trying to conclude what happened to that system before, when it responded a certain way. So let me give you a couple of examples so you understand. Um, in the real concrete case, when a person gets tumor or cancer, you get first diagnosed and you look at the tumor and you try to predict what might have done the job that led us to here. Or if you give therapy and the tumor comes back, you look at the endpoint and you try to predict what might have caused it. And there's a fundamental problem with this approach because what it looks like now is nothing compared to what it was before. So think of you today, and if I asked Kunal to if I gave him like five pictures of you when you were born, just when you were born, and four other babies, and we were to ask Kunal to predict which of these five babies became you, it would be very hard to do that because when you are early on, the differences are not strong. Maybe 5 years ago, if he was given five pictures of you, one picture of you and four of other people, he could say, this is you today. So most cases you cannot because things change quite a lot. A more extreme example is you can think of a tree. If you didn't know that trees or plants come from seeds, you would always assume that the tree was a smaller tree when it was small, not that it was a seed. Now we know that it was a seed, so it's easier to say that you can get this big transformation. But in most cases in biology, looking at endpoint is not going to tell you what drove the process and how it looked before. So we built Fate Map, which is basically like going to a grocery store and scanning the QR code of the product or chips or whatever you want to buy, which then gives you information about its price, its expiration date, other things. So we build a QR code for cells where we can tag millions of cells with unique barcodes, QR codes, and track which of these one in a million cells are going to survive therapy and become resistant and find everything about it. So that's what was Fate Map, and now we are implementing it in a quite a different range of systems.
It's pretty interesting research work and quite innovative as well. So let us move to the rapid fire round. It will be some
Okay.
quick rapid fire questions. So are you ready?
Okay, let's do it.
Yes. So the most challenging course you took at IIT Gandhinagar.
I think so. Even though it's rapid fire, I have to say that challenging could be because the teacher was bad, or it could be that the course was just hard. Uh, I think in terms of pure hardness for me, it was definitely engineering drawing. I don't know if they still have that course. I think I'm
Yeah, we
just
still
not.
have.
I don't think I'm just good at thinking in 3D. It was just very hard to get through that course. I don't think in that case the professor was bad. I just know for myself I'm just bad at engineering drawing. So a lot of us helped each other to figure it out. And then there were courses which were challenging, not necessarily because of the content, but because the professor was just not good enough. But we don't have to comment on it. But in terms of most challenging course, it has to be engineering drawing for me personally.
It has been the most challenging for many of us in the first year as well.
It is so hard. Yes.
You are either good at it or you are just too bad.
I actually completely agree. It's a binary answer in this case. Yes, you're either good at you get it or you don't get it.
Yes, sir. So, one word your colleagues would use to describe you.
Ah, I think relentless.
Interesting. So, Princeton or Penn, what surprised you most about US academia?
I think I just in both very similar in different ways, but also different in their own ways because Princeton doesn't have a medical school, and I went there as a student, Penn as a postdoc. I think the people who love science and they're quite serious at it. First when I first was coming to the US, the version of America that I remember is from the movies, and it's usually drinking, partying. That's not true, actually. People who are serious in what they want to do, they work very hard, and they're very careful in being precise in their language, and it's quite different from what you would expect when you first come. People wake up early, they come to work. It's about being serious about your work.
Okay. Yes, sir. If not engineering, what career would you have pursued?
I think I would probably want to be a coach, a sports coach in at like the highest level. I would love to coach a soccer team or an NBA team or something, but actually get deeper into it, learn various tactics and stuff.
Very good. And a book or a scientist who inspires you?
Uh, in terms of scientist who inspires me, I think it probably would be Max Delbruck. So Max Delbruck was a physicist. turned into biologist, got a Nobel Prize for contributing to biology late in his career. And I like him because a lot of things he did was way ahead of its time and was very fearless when it came to bringing problems and solutions to biology from physics and mathematics and statistics. And you can see why I like it, because I'm kind of trying to do the same, right? um, and in terms of book, they're quite I read quite a lot, but trying to remember if there's a book that really stands out. I think there's a book which I read, my PhD advisor gave it to me, which was called Ordinary Geniuses. It was a book on the lives of Max Gamow and Max Delbruck and Gamow, and how the book argues that you can have geniuses like Feynman or Einstein, but then you have a different kind of geniuses who are geniuses in different ways. Uh, and I really like their journey from dabbling into different problems.
So now to some reflections and advices. So for IIT Gandhinagar students and young researchers aspiring to pursue careers in research, what advice would you offer, especially with computation and artificial intelligence being at the forefront?
Yeah, I think that if you talk to people, there is a lot of chatter about it. I think you can see people are in two different categories. One who's very suspicious and scared of it. Kind of reminds me during my time when calculators and more complicated calculators were coming in, and professors were quite against it because they thought students would lose mental math skills. Now we are in 2025 and no one complains about it. You have to adapt, right? So the other category is, which I think I fall in, is the world is changing, technology is coming, so you have to, if you don't adapt, instead of complaining, if you don't figure out what are the new kind of things you can contribute, it is going to be very hard to be a grumpy person complaining about things. So when I teach, I'm quite open with people using AI and chat GPT, and that's just a subset of your question. But the point is, I'm quite open to it. My lab is pivoting quite a lot to doing a lot of AI. About four people in the lab are working on AI related stuff. Um, I think one advice I can give to students is you can approach this new AI revolution in two ways. One, you just know how to use it, which in itself is already better than many other people, because when I teach students, it's pretty clear some are quite resistant to using it. At least those who are grad students, so they're a little older than you guys. I would say be very good at using it. It's quite helps your life to be more efficient. Use it. The second thing is also understanding some of how it works and keeping on pace with it, not just being able to plug and play. And I think every discipline will be affected by it's already affected by it. And if you don't learn now, I ordered 3 books on machine learning. I'm learning from scratch myself, because if I have to sustainably live and grow and scientifically and intellectually, I must know how these things work to know their limitations. So any young student, it is very important to learn and understand these things. Some people can go very deep into the theoretical aspect, but maybe that's not needed for everyone. But it is worth going beyond just plug and play. Another thing that always reminds me of my time at IIT Gandhinagar was, and then my wife is American, so she doesn't understand when I use this word time pass. I think time pass is a very interesting concept that is specific to South Asia, India, right? And during those time, you sometimes meet friends who think the same way, and learning together or brainstorming together during this time pass moments are also quite it's something I miss quite a lot here. It's a lot more professional here. So I would love to do more time pass and, just chat about these things, because I think that's a special part of being an undergrad
Yes.
on AI
And
stuff.
yes. And one final piece of advice for the first year students entering IIT Gandhinagar in B.Tech 2025.
Yeah, I would say, I think this is not specific to just IIT Gandhinagar alone, but in India, it happened to me as well. Your life is quite, you get into IIT, everything is fine, but and there is a clear path to getting a job or MBA or IAS or maybe PhD. I think it is so hard to get into IIT, and if you keep doing things that you don't like doing, let's say you got into IIT because you're good at it, not necessarily because you wanted to do it. I think this is a chance to come in and take a step back and see what you want to do, because you enter when you are 18 and you're going to live, let's say, till 90 or 80 on an average, right? You have just lived 1/5 of your life or 1/4 of your life. So you really need these 4 years to invest, to understand what you like, what you don't like. So your next 60 years are much more happier if they were not before, which I do think, in many cases, most of India is middle class, lower middle class. Getting into IIT is a ticket to success. But now that you have gotten into IIT, I think 4 years, spend a lot of time thinking what you value, what your value systems are, things you like. And if you like something, usually it is not that hard to be successful at it. But don't do things just because the society wants you to do them, and make your own path.
That's a very valuable advice. So, Professor Goyal, thank you for taking out time and sharing your remarkable journey from IITGN to leading cutting edge research in biology and medicine. Your story is a testament to the power of curiosity, resilience, and interdisciplinary learning. To our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Follow Amalthea for more inspiring stories from IIT Gandhinagar alumni shaping the world. Until next time, this is Akshat signing off.